Hello! Instant Family is the film that we're reviewing. Mark Wahlberg's latest film.
Yeah.
This is a film about foster parenting and becoming new adoptive parents, isn't it? But the director, Sean Anders, directed Daddy's Home and Daddy's Home 2. Which kind of makes sense if you think about.
Daddy's Home.
It did. You did feel a bit Daddy's Home, and that wasn't just because of Mark Wahlberg, but there was a sort of ease with which he was in it. So it stars Mark Wahlberg and Rose Byrne, who we know from Bridesmaids. You see,
she was also in the Modern Annie film.
She was in the Modern Annie film. She's been in a few other things that we haven't particularly thought much of.
No.
And it also stars Isabela Moner. Yeah, who we all sort of kind of were scurrying across at each other going, I recognise her. What is she from?
She's from Sicario 2, the Cullen.
So we do recognise her. It also stars Octavia Spencer, who we saw recently in the trailer for Ma.
New horror,
New horror film.
And then the woman from Airplane was...
And the woman from Airplane, yes, Julie Hagerty, my God. We're all sort of sitting there going, hang on a minute, we recognise her.
Yeah.
And she's kind of aged, but not aged.
Yeah, but you can still tell it's her.
Just as ditzy as she was in Airplane. Yeah. So what's the premise of this film?
And they're basically the couple within the family that nobody kind of expects to have children.
Yes.
And they don't really expect to have children either. I think like Mark Wahlberg kind of throws in a joke about if we are going to have kids, then make them like 5 years old, like adopt them or something, because I don't want them growing up with an old dad and sort of thing. Rose actually takes it seriously and she's like, oh, actually we should probably adopt kids. And she's fully into it. She's like crying when she looks at all the kids that they can adopt, and Mark Wahlberg's more like, oh, I kind of meant it as a joke, I'm serious about it. And then he kind of falls into wanting to do it as well when he sees all the kids. They kind of end up going through the whole process of trying to adopt children. And they're kind of thinking more like a toddler, just one. Yeah. And then they end up adopting three because they're siblings and they come together. Mark
Wahlberg was the reluctant one, and Rose Byrne was very much the keen one.
Yeah.
But I thought what was lovely about it from the get-go was it managed a really tricky balancing act between real sort of laugh-out-loud comedy and some really genuinely meaningful emotional issues, around what it means to want children, have children. And although it was kind of talking about the whole foster parenting thing, it was quite a good film just about parenting in general and attitudes to children, wasn't it?
Like when I was looking at Mark Wahlberg and everything, it really reminded me of you. Like I related to how you must be relating to him.
You
know what I mean?
Because I was roaring with laughter a lot down the side.
And he's very like you.
Oh, that's sweet, especially his biceps.
And he's called Mark.
Marky Mark. They seek the help, don't they? It's a sort of governmental adoption agency or sort of fostering agency. And they have to go through the process. So we're introduced to quite an interesting sort of subcast, aren't we, of other potential parents.
Couples.
Gay couple, you've got a religious couple, you've got the sort of, the really ambitious single parent. And I thought that was quite funny because if you think about this film, it actually gave us an enormous number of characters. If you think of all the different parents of all the children.
Yeah, the family.
All of Rose's family, and then Mark Wahlberg's mum is this larger-than-life character too. And then you've got these three kids. But one of the funniest things is, so they go through the sort of circuitous...
It's a bit like us, wasn't it? Like mum's got the big family and then you've got the crazy mum.
Crazy nan. Exactly. Mark Wahlberg's family's tiny and the Rose Byrne's family is enormous. And it does say right at the beginning, this is inspired by a true story. I thought it was the director, but it might have been the writer if it's not the same person. But clearly this was made by someone who has an intimate experience,
definitely
of this whole process.
Yeah.
And I thought one of my first sort of scene where I really enjoyed and relaxed and sort of had great entertainment value was when they went to that place where all the kids were hanging around in a playground. The teenagers. And what does Mark Wahlberg say? He says, God, when are you ever allowed to kind of...
he's like, so if you hang around kids in a park or something, it's seen as creepy and weird, and now we're being encouraged to pick up kids from a park.
And in a weird way, what they were trying to do was they were sort of almost speed dating the kids to see if they could kind of get to know them. And all the kids were rejecting them, which I thought was really funny.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
And then that ended up with them finally going, well, let's talk to the teenagers. And I thought that was
because everyone was kind of avoiding the teenagers.
What did you think? Because I'm sure you probably identified with all the teenagers on their phones hanging around in the corner over there.
I mean, I wasn't too sure about Lizzie, the teenager at first.
Right, yeah.
You know, when she kind of, because basically Mark Wahlberg wants to go over and talk to the teenagers because they're being avoided and he thinks it's unfair. and then they like loudly discuss why they shouldn't go over, and then she kind of confronts them and she's like, we can hear what you say and everything. It felt a bit cringy.
Yes.
Her kind of monologue there, but I felt at times they were overdoing the teenager stereotypes.
Right. Okay.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I do.
Sometimes I felt like it was overdoing the teenager thing.
Yeah.
So like they had to include like the nude photos.
Oh, I see. Yeah, the dick pic thing.
Yeah,
and all that.
I felt sometimes it was pushing all the teenager emotions into it when it could have been kept a bit less.
Going back to the sheer number of characters, then there's the Octavia Spencer, and then another character who's one of the sort of I guess you call them therapists or kind of caseworkers who's responsible for introducing. There's Octavia Spencer, and then there's another woman, Sharon, played by Tig Notaro, who was brilliant, I thought.
And they performed really well.
They did work really well. There was sort of a strange double act in the middle. There were so many sort of great kind of double acts or solo performances in this film.
But you didn't feel overwhelmed by the characters?
No, not at all. Not at all. And so there were just some wonderfully funny moments, like in the park when they saw this child who was neglected, and he described her as looking like a child that was
tied to a radiator.
And sort of ignored or something, and it happened to be one of the caseworkers' actual kids.
Yeah,
you know,
she was like, oh, that's my child. And I don't have a radiator and I don't tie her to it.
Yeah, exactly. I thought there were some really funny moments like that. And then they also even injected sort of a bit of professional rivalry between Octavia Spencer and her colleagues. So there'll be times where they were working out their own shit.
Yeah.
These are people who are looking to adopt or foster children that potentially, eventually, they adopt. So they're no longer foster parents, they become their actual parents.
Yeah.
And I felt all the way through the film, you were gunning for and hoping for that moment where the three children that Mark Wahlberg and Rose Byrne end up taking in eventually call them mummy and eventually call them daddy. And I thought that was dealt with quite funnily.
And the kind of competition as to who was going to be called mummy and daddy first.
Yeah. And there was a nice competition between Wahlberg and Rose Byrne, wasn't there?
Yeah.
How would you characterise the three kids? Because you had the teenagers, but the two younger kids were funny, weren't they?
Yeah, they were great. The little boy was like really emotional.
He was
and
really emotional.
Fragile. Like if any of them got like not even annoyed with him, if they just told him to do something, he'd be like, sorry.
I know, he was so funny,
really
wasn't
he? Yeah, he was really sweet.
He was so
and he was kind
sweet.
of like looking really lost all the time and like really stupid.
And hiding under things all the time, wasn't he?
And you wouldn't expect him to be, you'd expect it to be the other way around, because then the smallest girl, she was insane.
She was like, great though, wasn't she?
She was great, yeah.
I mean, her potato chips.
Oh yeah, that's like me with my potatoes.
Yeah, don't get in the way of a kid and its potato chips.
No, definitely.
I mean, and so you have these great moments where you felt the uncontrollability of the children.
Yeah.
And suddenly how they'd bitten off far more than they could chew. You know, they'd gone from having no kids to suddenly having 3 kids.
Yeah.
And I loved the fact that when they went back to some of the support groups to talk about how it was going and how they were bedding in, they were all really kind of cocky and sort of, no, it's fine. And then like 2-3 weeks later,
they're like
absolute
total mess.
bedlam, absolutely.
And everyone's laughing at them. And they're like, do you find it funny that we're not coping?
It is a bit conventional what happens between the teenager. It does become quite focused about the teenager, because the teenager... I mean, Lizzie, the Lizzie character, she sort of...
Which is harder to adjust. She finds it harder to adjust because she's obviously older, so she was taken away from her real parents at an older age than the 2 younger kids.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I really liked her character, and I thought it was great the way they kind of showed the emotions and everything, how she'd be really nice one minute and then she'd blow up. But I felt at times they were pushing the teenage thing too much. Yeah,
well, there was that scene, wasn't there, where she had her friends round and then they'd come in through the window.
It was a bit too rebellious.
In a black room, painted black. I know what you mean. There were a few kind of...
Because I feel like teenagers always say they want a black room, but they never really get a black room.
Yeah, that's true, actually.
So,
that is true.
Yeah, I didn't feel... And she didn't seem like the type of teenager that would have a black room. So it just felt like it was forced. Teenage stereotypes.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
But it didn't bother me. It wasn't a problem.
No.
But if I had to choose something, my problem with it is that.
I'll tell you something that I thought they put in, which I was not expecting and I really liked, was the politically incorrect element, which was them both regretting having taken on these kids.
Yeah.
You know, and there was a really powerful, funny scene where they go into their bedroom, parents.
We could just give them back.
We could just give them back. And then you see, and I thought the two, Mark Wahlberg and Rose Byrne played it brilliantly, where you saw them go from level to level, almost stepping stones of we could even get gifts.
Yeah.
People feel sorry for us. And you saw them go all the way to that potential place, because even as parents, you sometimes, not in a horrible way, but you do entertain thoughts of, what would life be like if I didn't have any children? You know.
Well, that's like teenagers. They're like, I could just run away.
Yeah. That's true. That's true. And so there were lots of moments like that where I thought, in a normal traditional film, they wouldn't have given you the time to have those little moments of entertaining the worst thought. I wanted to ask you, as a teenager, did you really feel for the Mark Wahlberg and Rose Byrne character? Because the story, without giving it away too much, because I don't want to spoil it actually, but it becomes very traumatic, the extent to which they hold on to their children or potentially lose their children.
Yeah.
And I really felt for them. I thought it was telling, you know, forgetting how good or not the film was, I thought it was telling us something very powerful about this whole concept of foster parenting.
Yeah, definitely.
And did you feel for them?
Yeah, I really did at a point. It's different when it's your own parents.
Yeah.
All teenagers, we're selfish.
Yeah.
We are selfish. But like when you look at it from somebody, when you're looking in at a different family, like I was with this one, and you can see that they are really trying hard to do what's best for them and everything, you do feel sorry for them. And it was especially hard for them, because obviously they aren't actually their children.
Yes.
So they didn't really know if it felt right for them.
Yeah.
Because they say at one point, like, I don't want them to be taken away from us and given to their real mum.
Yeah, biological mum.
Because we love them, but at the same time, that's their real mum. So should we be making them feel like they should be taken away from that sort of thing? So yeah, I did feel for them.
It really successfully showed the difficulties from both the sort of the child's perspective, but the parent's perspective of any adoption process. Because of course you have got the real parents in inverted commas, and any child, I understand this, not knowing my father, you know, any child has a desire and a hunger to know who is their actual parent. And it's easy for us standing on the outside, and I think that's where it's quite a clever film as a viewer. We're looking at it going, well, obviously this is where the cradle of love is. You're getting it from these new parents, but of course the yearning of the Lizzie, you know, the teenage girl, was of course, regardless of what her mum had done, regardless of how out of control her mum is, her real mum is, she's still connected. It moved along, although it was quite long, and I think we all agreed it could have been about 15-20 minutes shorter. It was about 2 hours long. It clipped along.
It wasn't boring.
I mean, scenes kept just being churned through, and so I was never really bored. I mean, there did come a point, we were watching it late at night, there did come a point where you sort of thought, oh God, could this have been told a bit more quickly? But there were some moments of real kind of eccentricity, I thought. You know, you'd have lots of sort of bit characters that would sort of come into the situation. Like there was a scene where they were trying to placate Lizzie, weren't they?
And the neighbour.
And the neighbour.
Yeah.
And they really, I mean, rather than just her being an eccentric bit character that came in, they really pursued it, didn't they?
Yeah.
So a little bit like with Octavia Spencer and her work colleague, how they'd have a row, but they'd really stick with the row for a bit.
They would keep it.
What did you think of the woman from Airplane and the rest of Rose Byrne's family? I thought
they were all quite good, actually.
Yeah, the brother-in-law, wasn't it? He was funny.
He was really funny.
When he came looking over at the dick pic and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah. And it was like when, what's her face from Airplane?
Oh, yeah.
It was like,
Julie Hagerty.
It's a dick pic.
Oh, yeah.
And then she's like, well, what do you think it is, Mom? Dick pic. And she's just like...
What do we think of Mark Wahlberg? I mean, I have a huge man crush on Mark Wahlberg.
I thought it was a really good performance. I thought it was because you don't really see him do
emotion
stuff quite like that. Yeah, because in Daddy's Home, in the first Daddy's Home, he's majority of it he's quite tough, and in the second one he kind of becomes a bit friendly.
Because Will Ferrell makes him softer.
Yeah, but even but with this one, it was like it was even more of that. He just seemed like a real dad.
Yes.
He was like a proper dad. And also he did like a lot of emotional stuff as well. Like he was crying at one point. Yeah, smart.
I mean, he's got real comic bones though, doesn't he?
He does.
I mean, there are moments when he just make me laugh out loud.
He was just so like you, like when you get angry with like one of the boys.
Oh my
there's
God,
a scene where he gets
so funny.
Angry at the wrong kid for doing something that he thought he did. It's really funny.
Margo Martindale, who played his mum, I thought brilliant casting.
Oh, yeah.
So
Nanny Di.
It's Nanny Di, and you believe they were mum and she was Mark Wahlberg's. If ever there was anyone who was going to be Mark Wahlberg's mum, she was it.
I love that scene when we first introduced her, and she comes in and she kind of is a really enthusiastic hello to everybody, hugs them, and she goes up to her and she goes, They just like gives one arm and then
it's so funny. Kiki isn't here, but Kiki absolutely loved it, didn't she?
Yeah.
To the
I
point,
wasn't expecting her.
No. I mean, she looked quite sort of stone, steely faced when she was watching it. And then after she said that was brilliant, and she did say that she'd give it a 9.5.
Yeah, that's quite.
Yeah, and that's huge for Kiki. So she loved it.
Even though I liked it, it was, like you said, a mainstream pop film. It's not in any way kind of alternative or clever.
No.
It was just, but at first I was thinking it was going to be very like that, and I was like, I'm not too sure. But then once you were past that, it was really, really funny. I mean, there were so many moments where I was laughing my head off.
Yeah.
And it's not just funny. I mean, there's really like sentimental bits in there and relatable parts.
Yeah.
And like I said, my only problem with it was sometimes the stereotypical teenage thing.
Yeah, I think you're
right.
Because
although teenagers are rebellious, we're not obviously rebellious.
Sure.
We're usually quite secretive about when we're rebelling.
So they
when
could have been
very like, I'm going to expose myself.
Yes.
I'm going to take nudes with the door unlocked. I'm going to paint my room black. I just felt it was a bit too much at times. Yeah.
That's good. That's interesting.
But I thought she did a really good job because the teenage character could have gotten really, really irritating. And she was at times, but I mean, teenagers are irritating. But it could have been a really cringy character, but she managed to keep it not too cringy. And Mark Wahlberg was brilliant.
He was.
I really liked him
in
it. And like when he'd get angry, like there's this moment when she's getting into the car with two of her friends. He was like, "Don't you open that door," and she opens it. He goes, "Don't you get inside that door," and then she gets in the car, "Don't you shut that door," and he doesn't do anything. He just stands there and says it. Or like when he's like, "Let me be the bad guy," and like the mum keeps stepping in, sort of thing.
Oh, that was a wonderful moment where I thought, God, Nadia would have loved that, where it was about who's the bad cop, who's the good cop. And he wanted to be the bad cop, but she wouldn't let him be the bad cop.
Even though she was complaining about always
being the bad cop. Exactly.
But and I really liked all the moments of when they were being called mummy and daddy in the kind of competition. At one point when the little like emotional boy calls her mummy, he goes, "Good night, mummy." She goes, "What was that?" She was like, "What did you say?" And then she goes, "Do you repeat that again?" She was like, "Say it louder." And then he's like asleep, and then she's like poking him. She's like, "Hey, say what you said again." And then she's like, "Hey, wake up! What was it you were gonna say?" Really good. So it was just really believable. I thought she was brilliant. That's the first time I've seen her and really liked her. I'll probably give this film an 8.5.
8.5.
Yeah. Because it was really, really good.
Yeah.
Obviously, it wasn't the perfect film. No. But it's definitely great for like what we did, like a family night out.
Mark Wahlberg never ceases to just entertain me. I just find him very funny. I just find he's that man in a situation, can't do right for doing wrong, but at the same time, you know, trying to be masculine and failing and then succeeding. And so I liked all of that. Turned me around on Rose Byrne. I thought she was brilliant. Isabela Moner, who played Lizzie, I thought was absolutely fantastic. You're right. I can hear your criticisms that she was a bit cliched in some of the sort of teenagers. But it was a film in which, right down to Julie Hagerty, right down to a chap like Charlie McDermott is the actor who played Mark Wahlberg's assistant on the building site. He told him to just go for lunch. Yeah. That was one of the funniest moments in the film. You know, this is a film with tiny little micro moments of comedy, with bit part actors who might only be there for just that scene, who've given it such authenticity and oomph that you're kind of, every part in the film is funny. I mean, everyone in this film, however big or small their part screen time, had committed to this wholeheartedly, and for me that made it a really entertaining and all-encompassing. And you know, I was thinking of I was moved to tears, I was laughing, I was frustrated, I hated each one of the member of the family for not listening to the other and not being this, that and the other. And I just thought it was an incredibly successful mainstream film. I thought, if you want to go out with your family, and the great thing is, because it's about kids and because it's about parents and because there are grandparents in it, it does that thing of a film reaching from 8 to 80. So, it's truly a family film to be watched with all the family. And I think with you, I'd probably give it 8.5. In that genre. I mean, I wouldn't say that it was a perfect film, but it sat for me. It's the kind of film like Tag from last year or Game Night, where there was enough entertainment in there, but it was also anchored with some real emotional truth.
And a good story.
And a good storyline, and it made me think a lot about adoption, and it made me think a lot about the complexities of that. And a really nice touch at the end of the end credits is some real photos of the real people that have inspired the story, which I thought was a lovely touch. So I'd give it 8.5. And what did Nanny Di say she'd give it?
I think she said 8.5.
8.5 too, so there you go. There's my Mark Wahlberg.
For more film and family fun, don't forget to click the subscribe button and make sure to click the bell to never miss an update.